Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Glory Man United podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Quinn, and joining me today is special guest Phil De Brún from Beyond the Pitch. How's it going, Phil?
Oh, good, mate. How are you?
I'm good, especially after that result at the weekend. United beating Wolves 2-0 and keeping Liverpool at bay. So Liverpool won this evening. So we need to keep this up and get these 6 points and get over the line. Make sure our better rivals don't get ahead of us in the league. Isn't that right, Phil?
I would say so, mate. It's a Monday, and I'm not in a drunk tank. I'm not arrested, and United gets 3 points, so it's a good day.
Um, so I'm going to talk about the ownership situation and some of the transfer rumours that have been doing the rounds. Um, so according to the reports that we were reading last week in much of the British media, Ineos are huge favourites to buy Manchester United. I'm not 100% convinced of that yet. Um, what's your information then, Phil?
Well, the thing is about information and all this process is it's been clearly briefed with an agenda, with an intent to deceive, or an intent to present a certain media narrative. Quite certain the Qataris are the ones that briefed about Jim Ratcliffe and the structure of his bid, about him retaining Glazer part ownership, and they knew how that would play with United fans. Of course, they've both been at it. Pretty much from bid statement when they put their bids in about restoring the football club back to community asset and being custodians of the fans and all this, and investing in the football club and transfers and everything else and infrastructure and all this easy targets. So it's really hard to know exactly what's correct. But what would be correct in saying is that both parties are extremely confident that. I have to say I've heard this more from Ineos than I have from the Qataris. But what would surprise me about the Qataris in this, to be honest, would be if they were going to lose this bid. I think it would be easier for them to withdraw from the process than to lose it based on valuation. I think if they had reached a point where Jim Ratcliffe had appraised the club and was willing to pay for the club at a price point the Qataris weren't, surely it would make more sense for them to say we're no longer interested in buying the football club and let it go to Jim Ratcliffe. Rather than, because key to getting Jim Ratcliffe's bid up is having both of them involved. Key to getting the Qataris bid up is having both of them involved. If the Qataris pulled out, there's no incentive for Jim Ratcliffe to continue to increase his price and vice versa. So it's hard to see what would be in it for the Qataris to remain in a process where they are going to lose on that pen at a certain price point. But they're not stupid people. I mean, what United are being appraised at and what's being paid for are two very different things. A football club's not worth anywhere near what either party's willing to pay. And maybe there's some issues with who's funding the bid from the Qataris and who's fronting it in terms of how badly they want United. I mean, there's no doubt that Own United will bring greater scrutiny to people that don't want scrutiny. So that is undeniable. So maybe there's question marks on the Qataris end about is this something they really want? And yeah, it would be correct to say that Ineos have been very confident for about a week and a half now that they're going to get preferred bidder status. Either way, this thing has to come to an end. It has to come to an end very soon. Even if it was announced tomorrow that someone got preferred bidder status and everything went through as smoothly as possible, you're looking at July before someone would get the keys at the earliest. That's 6 weeks away, which is completely and absolutely ridiculous for any football club where the summer is fundamental to your season, to making progress. And Ten Hag will enormous uncertainty, not just Ten Hag, but the staff at the football club, but everyone else. It's just ridiculous.
I mean, many of the clubs in the Premier League are making moves in the transfer market already, and you're saying that we won't have new owners in place until July. I mean, how exactly are we going to conduct any transfer business between now
Uh,
and July?
Up until Brentford, mate, Eric Ten Hag had been given a £50 million centre back, whatever Martinez cost, 55 million. A £12 million left back and a free transfer. So he was really only backed in the last 2 weeks of that window. He wasn't backed in January. So Eric Ten Hag has had essentially a 2 week window to work with since he's been at Manchester United. So it's nothing new. They don't care. The Glazers do not care. I mean, these are things you and I care about, but they don't. So it'll be another situation just like it was last summer, where you're not getting first choice players, where you reduce the players who are in complex situations with the football clubs that maybe don't really want to leave, or there's a reason why they want to sell them, and they've already fallen behind the Alexis McAllister race, which is not just him but other players that they met with in January that they wanted, but. How can you make promises to agents when you don't know who's writing the check?
So you think we won't sign a single player now until July?
No, I wouldn't say that. Well, until July, of course. There's no way. Who's writing the check?
I can only
Joe
imagine.
Glazer approves every signing they'd make, no matter how small. How can Joe Glazer approve a signing right now? I mean, even if there was no takeover, you have to remember you needed a hemorrhage in cash. Right? So there's no money at the football club to fund signings without investment or a club sale. That's why they didn't spend in January.
I can only imagine how frustrated Ten Hag would be.
Well, what do you think?
With that?
He's essentially in Ralph Rangnick territory. He's essentially in Ralph Rangnick territory, where he's a glorified babysitter. Because he can't choose who can come in, and he can't choose who can go out. And it's no surprise that United haven't looked great in the last 4 to 5 weeks. So the incentive structure is not there anymore. All that stuff. I mean, I think Ten Hag would accept if the Glazers were to say to him tomorrow morning, "Look, you'll have new owners by mid-July. They won't be perfect." He'd be okay with that. But this limbo that he's in right now, where recruitment staff can't do their jobs. Even the most basic things like devising a budget for the summer tour on who can go, who can't go. You can't do any of these things.
It's an absolute disgrace. Dresden here says, "What's your hunch, Phil, on who the new owners will be? Do you fancy it'll be Ineos now?"
Well, here's the thing. It would be a massive surprise to me if the Qataris were just found out on Friday that Jim Ratcliffe valued the club higher than them. They will have known from day one. I mean, there's no way the people inside that bid process weren't notifying Qataris and Jim Ratcliffe on where they needed to be to buy the football club. I mean, it's in the Glazers' interest to do that, it's in Rain's interest to do that. And anyone that's been part of any private closed bid process know that's just how business gets done. So they will have known where they need to be. If they're not going to up their offer by Friday, and I don't think they will. So I would say that Jim Ratcliffe is probably the favourite right now. But I'll be honest, I'm surprised at that, because I thought the Qataris would end up going to a price point that Jim wouldn't.
Well, it's been well documented that Avram Glazer has been in London this weekend, and he was at a hotel apparently that is owned by Qatar, and we also know that Ineos have a HQ in London. Do you think that tells us that this process is going to come to an end this week?
I don't know if it tells us it's going to come to an end this week, but clearly, this can't go on in perpetuity. This is something that has to come to an end very, very soon. United are reaching a point where they need major cash injection to fund what they need to do this summer. There's issues with the stadium even being in safety compliance. So the Glazers are really at a point now where you have to devise summer budgets, and that's going to mean they have to find money somehow. The Athletic did an article that showed they were losing around 104 million a year if you look at the projections, the financial projections going back, a couple of years ago up to 2025, they're absolutely horrendous on current trends. Even if they qualify for the Champions League, it really won't change much because most of that gets consumed by player wage increase, budget, bonuses, and everything else. I mean, yes, it helps commercially, but for the Glazers, it really doesn't change that much. So they're at a point where if they want to hold on to the football club, they've got to find money.
Yeah, definitely. It took me by surprise what you said there, that the the takeover won't be completed by July. I mean, we can't sign anyone until July.
Well, I
That's a
mean, look,
real sucker
if
punch.
United are in the process of being sold, this is one of the things that I think the Glazers are also thinking about. If they sell to the Qataris, there's a possibility that that could get dragged out for months, right? Maybe 6 months before they pass a fit and proper test and all the background checks. The Glazers would have to fund the football club in that time period. They would have to give Ten Hag money this summer that they don't have. Richard Arnold told you that a year ago, whenever he did that meeting at this impromptu meeting. We said, look, the money's there this summer. After that's not there, Richard said, you can't go to our training ground and say where's that billion we've wasted. You could go to Florida, mind you, and ask where's that $1.5 billion they took out, because it's right there. But he's been telling you this. United have been looking at selling the football club at least since last July, August. So even if it goes through today, I'm quite confident that it would be able to say to agents, look, we'll have the money in July, just hang tight, and players would do that. But right now they can't do that. They can't make that promise. So until there's some firm clarification on what's actually going to happen, nobody can say anything with any high degree of confidence. So when you're talking about looking at this player, looking at that player, it's total nonsense. I've no doubt that you have players they're very interested in, but the business as a business is not in a position to buy anyone until there's some sort of. I mean, if the Glazers had revenue to fund this summer, they wouldn't be selling. Right? If they had money to continue to run the football club with it being their personal enrichment tool, where they're not maxed out the credit card, where it's no longer hemorrhaging cash, where it's still making a profit, the club wouldn't be for sale. So, it's at a point where they can't take any more money out, they can't borrow any more money, they can't use a company credit card anymore to sign players. They're already massively in arrears for previous years. So there's a reason why United didn't sign a striker in January, for exactly the same reason they can't sign one this summer without major investment.
Yeah, it seems as if they're just delaying the process because they want to bleed as much money out of Ineos or
Of course.
the Qataris as possible. Kieran Kennedy here says, will there be delays in the takeover due to Ineos owning Nice? Surely that will cause a few issues. Well, if I remember correctly, Red Bull own two football teams. Watford and Udinese are owned by the same people, so surely that won't be an issue.
Well, it would be really easy for Jim Ratcliffe to transfer title and ownership of a football club, and this will be something that he will have known about right away. So no, I don't see it being an issue.
Yeah, one of the other directors at Ineos could become the director at United or Nice. It doesn't have to be Jim himself. They can easily work their way around the UEFA rules on that. Now, obviously, we don't know who's signing the checks at the moment, but I'm sure Ten Hag and his staff do have names in mind, and a lot of those stories are appearing in the media at the moment. One name that keeps coming up again and again is Kim Min-jae at Napoli, who seems to be an excellent defender. He seems to be the favourite at the moment to come in and replace Harry Maguire, who is surely going to lead the football club this summer. Would you be excited by that signing at centre back?
I don't think that will happen.
You
Simply
don't?
because Harry Maguire's fourth choice centre back. Kim Min-jae isn't coming to United to be fourth choice centre back. So,
No.
third choice centre back is Lindelof. Right? So, if Kim Min-jae comes to United, he's coming to start. So, he's a very, very,
Yes.
very good defender. He's very much in demand. And I just don't see United saying to Kim Min Jae, come and sit on the bench and play. What did Harry Maguire start? 5 games up until about 2 months ago, about a month ago before Martinez got injured. So you're going to take Maguire's place. Maguire started 5 games up until Martinez got injured. And I just don't see it happening. I think that more realistically is United will sign a young midfielder.
If I could just come in there, I think he'll be brought in to be a starter because, okay, he's replacing Maguire in the squad, but he's going to have a bigger role than Maguire, I think, because let's face it, Varane is out injured a lot of the season, so he's going to get a lot of game time. Martinez has had his injury problems now, and I think at the very least he'll be a third choice centre back, and he'll play a lot of games because of Varane's injury record. That's how I see it.
Well, I don't know, but I think if you look at Varane started, he missed half of the Premier League season the year before, right? So this season, to be fair, he's been largely fit. He's also retired from international football. So if you look at Varane's number of games this season, let me see here. I'm just pulling up. So he's looking at games played, appearances. Raphael Varane. He's played 20 games this season. Right, started 20 games. So and that's just in the league. So yeah, he does get injured. Martinez gets injured, but the problem is that when you're bringing in centre backs, Maguire isn't even fourth choice centre back. He's competing for one position, and that's the right-footed centre back position. So even when Varane or Martinez is injured, he only starts if Luke Shaw isn't fit. So Martinez, Kim Min Jae will be competing. I think he's a right-footed centre back. Could be wrong on that, but whether he's right-footed or left-footed, if he's left-footed, he's certainly not starting when Martinez is fit, which for the most part is every week. If he's right-footed centre back, Lindelof's done an exceptional job there, to be fair. And I think that you need to have other more pressing needs around the field that I think would get more of attention, given you are going to have to be smart with their budget.
I think that you rate Lindelof a lot more highly than I do, and that's fair enough.
How can you not rate Victor Lindelof? Let me ask you this: how many clubs do you know in the Premier League have better third choice centre backs?
I haven't really thought about it, but
third choice centre back.
What I'm going to say to you is that
you look at Liverpool sitting with Konate, right?
I don't.
You take a look at Arsenal, Ben White, right? They're sitting there with Rob Holding, third choice centre back. Rob Holding should be playing for QPR, right? You take a look at Spurs. You're talking young Sanchez, this the Colombian centre back. Over Christian Romero. Victor Lindelof is a very, very good player. Victor Lindelof has come in and been exceptional in the games that he's played.
Not all games.
Well, will you tell me when was his last bad game?
One of his really good games was
when was his last bad game?
I thought he was exceptional in that game.
When was his last bad game? Where Victor Lindelof's a major problem here, because I can't think of one. Certainly not this season.
I'm trying to think. It wasn't the most recent game.
Mate, it should be obvious now. It should come to your head right away, because I could tell you when Maguire's last bad game is. I could tell you when Weghorst's last bad game is. I could tell you when Anthony Martial's last bad game is. I could tell you when a whole host of players aren't good enough to play for United when their last bad game was.
The two defeats to Brighton and West Ham, particularly the Brighton game, I don't think Lindelof was very good in those games.
Hold on a minute. United kept a clean sheet in both of those games, essentially. They made two major individual errors in both of those games, none of which were Victor Lindelof's. Right? One was David De Gea throwing the ball in the net, and neither of those mistakes happen if United score goals. When you don't score goals, nervousness creeps into your defending. Neither of these mistakes are even mentioned. None of those have anything to do with Victor Lindelof, and none of them would be stopped by Kim Min Jae coming to the football club. So for me, he's one of the best third choice centre backs in the league. This is a position where I feel United are in great shape. They have other pressing needs that need to get addressed. They're going to have to fix the forward line, not just once, but maybe twice. I think they need 2 strikers, right?
And
I think they need another player beside Casemiro. We talk about other midfielders, needing protectors,
the,
right? Needing other players that play beside them to get the best out of them. You hear this at other football clubs. You hear this at Chelsea. Enzo Fernandez needs a partner. Well, why doesn't Casemiro need one? Imagine Casemiro with a top class player beside him, where he's not getting exposed every week, where he's getting bookings. So United need another player like an Alexis McAllister that can play in a pivot, that can play in an attacking midfield role. They need at least 2 forwards, in my opinion, possibly another right back. There's an alternative to Dallo, and a goalkeeper. But to me, I think centre back. I mean, I really don't see an issue. Maguire has to
no,
go, of course, but a young centre back would be fine.
well, we'll wait and see on that one. But Lindelof, the 2 he saw was Spurs as well. I think he was culpable in that game. He's played over 300 times for the club, and I'm still not convinced about him. He has strengths and weaknesses.
Well, every player does.
And we've talked about it many times that he gets bullied too easily. He's not particularly quick. I'm
going to disagree with you on that one, mate, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've seen you talk about him a lot. When he had like a good game, I know you tweet about it all the time. But I just don't rate him as highly as what you do.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of people will agree with you, and a lot of people agree with me.
No, everyone.
I don't want this to turn into the. I don't want this to turn into the Beyond the Pitch Man Night podcast, where it's a sparring session between you and Alan McGuigan. So, but yeah, I just want to say I think he is a decent backup, but I do think that if Kim and Jay came in, he would be ahead of Lindelof in the pecking order. That's another thing. That Lindelof did say in a press conference when he was away with Sweden that he would have to evaluate his situation in the summer. So he might not be satisfied with his game time and might want to leave himself.
Very possible. And I have no doubt that he would be highly in demand if he wanted to leave. The other clubs would certainly be all over someone like Victor Lindelof. I think he'd walk into most teams in the Premier League. So he's certainly a much more saleable asset than Harry Maguire. So it's very possible that someone of that quality would not want to be sitting in the third choice centre back. But the reason why Victor Lindelof wouldn't be happy is because he doesn't play enough. Because he doesn't play enough ahead of Rafael Varane and Lisandro Martinez. That would be exactly the same as any defender that's coming in. So you'd have to say to Rafael Varane, you're being replaced, because he's not going to sit in the bench either.
Yeah, let's assume that we do have 3 great options at centre back, Varane, Martinez, and Lindelof. That's still not enough, because we've seen, we've picked up a lot of injuries in that position, and we always do in every season. So we need at least 4 senior centre backs, I think.
But look, look how many games Harry Maguire started this season. Let me tell you.
That's because Luke Shaw has been favoured ahead of him by the manager.
Okay, and this is exactly what I'm saying. Alright, so when you bring another centre back in, right, you have to bring him in for one of 2 reasons. They have to start, which is fine. Then you have to choose which one you want to drop, Maguire, Varane, or Varane and Martinez. It won't be Martinez. Or they have to sit on the bench, right? So Harry Maguire has started 7 Premier League games this season, and most of those happened, 3 of those happened in the last few weeks because of Martinez's injury. Now that's an £80 million centre back. So if you want to bring in another centre back, you have to decide you're either going to break up the centre back pairing that you have, or you're going to bring in someone that's going to be a fringe player, which usually is a young centre back. So I think to be realistic, that's we'll look at 2 quality centre backs, because you don't rotate in that position, and then you bring in 2 I mean, if Lindelof with the young centre back, I think is really competent back four, especially when you can play Luke Shaw now.
Well, let's see. Obviously, Ten Hag will decide what areas he wants to prioritise, with probably a somewhat limited budget. No matter who is in charge, because United have to meet FFP requirements, because they've earned up almost nothing in the last 10 years through player sales, and it seems like it's going to catch up with us. But obviously FFP seems to be optional for certain clubs, and I think you know who I'm talking about. Um, so let's move on to another position. Um, there's a young midfielder, Amadou Onana at Everton, who could potentially come in as a backup to Casemiro. Obviously, it's just been rumored. I don't really know if Ten Hag is really interested in this player or not, but it wouldn't be an interesting option. Now it's long been talked about that we need to have a backup for Casemiro, because when he is not available through suspension or whatever, there's no direct replacement, and we're having to, play McTominay or Fred in that position, who don't fulfill they don't have the same qualities as Casemiro. So, do you think it'd be sensible for us to bring in, uh, a direct backup for Casemiro, someone like Onana?
I don't think it's a direct backup. I think it's someone that can also play in Casemiro's position, but someone that's ready to start. When United don't have that Casemiro player, they drop Ericsson back there, they drop Bruno back there. Neither of them are particularly great at it, but it's about building attacks from deep. They don't offer you much defensively. They don't track runners, so it's not ideal. So whoever United send in the summer as a midfielder has to be someone that's ready to start alongside Casemiro. Put Ericsson back to being an impact player, a substitute player. We're not starting every week, which you just can't do. So the midfield three of Casemiro, another one in Bruno, really what you need to be targeting, someone that has legs, someone that has is in the prime of their career. So I think that's a very expensive fix. Alexis McAllister, I think, would have been perfect for it. Obviously, you want the Frankie De Jong in there, that type of player that can net transitions from defence midfield to attack, that gives you something defensively, gives you something offensively. So I think whoever United buy can't be necessarily a backup to Casemiro, but someone that can do what Casemiro does.
Yeah, we do need to have someone who can fill in for him. I mean, Manchester City have two players in every position, and if Rodri wasn't available, they can play Calvin Phillips there, who they haven't used much, or they can play uh, Guduan in that position. We don't we don't have those kind of options. So I also want to talk about the goalkeeper situation. Sometimes it astonishes me how many goalkeepers United actually have on the books, but a lot of them are out of contract this summer. Obviously, Butland's loan deal is expiring, Heaton's deal is expiring, the Hayes deal is expiring, but we're all expecting him to sign a new contract. Um, but we're being linked with a Dutch goalkeeper from Anderlecht. Um, do you think he could come in and be a rotational option in his first season with a view to eventually replacing David De Gea if that goes ahead? What do you think, Phil?
No, I don't think United will rotate in the goalkeeping position. I think if they sign someone to be a goalkeeper, they're bringing someone in to replace De Gea. Rotating goalkeepers is a mug's game. United tried this before. I remember when Taibbi came in, and even De Gea when he first came in, they were trying to give him game time ahead of Van der Sar in anticipation for him taking over. It was a
What I mean
nightmare.
is a cup goalkeeper, if you know what I mean. A cup goalkeeper, not necessarily
Yeah,
rotating all the time.
but then you have the same problem that I'm just talking about Kim Min Jae. So what top goalkeeper wants to come in and be a cup goalkeeper? And so
Well,
you bring in a young goalkeeper, but young goalkeepers need to play. So it's a very very difficult position to fill. And if you look at most clubs that are dealing with backup goalkeepers, they're experienced goalkeepers that aren't quite good enough to be a number one anymore. I mean, you take a look at that throughout the league. No one rotates their goalkeeper. Um, City, left Ederson out, put in young Ortega for a week or something. But I think it's a really hard position. That's the backup goalkeeper to fill, because most goalkeepers that are good enough have the option of playing first team football, and most that aren't are usually experienced or too young.
So if Bart Verbruggen comes in, you expect him to start then?
No, if he's going to be brought in, if United are not bringing a young goalkeeper to rotate them, that won't happen. They'll bring in another experienced goalkeeper that, like Dubravka, like Jack Butland, those types of goalkeepers were, if they had God something get injured, they'd be able to trust them. Young goalkeeper is a huge risk, and
Well,
I
De
just
Gea
don't think
himself
they're
was a
going to
young
happen.
goalkeeper.
Yeah, but De Gea was coming into a Premier League winning team with probably the greatest manager in world football, coming into a team of experienced winners, and even then he still struggled. So I think for Ten Hag to do that in a team that still hasn't won anything really, even Diogo Costa at Porto is young. And I think if United are going to go down the road of replacing De Gea, with someone a view to replacing De Gea, I don't see them going for some random kid in the Belgian league.
That's fair. But the only thing is, our budget needs maybe elsewhere, so we might have to get creative if he wants to bring in a goalkeeper.
Yeah, but this is the thing, like, whether they have to get creative or not, right? So, this is why I don't think they're going to replace De Gea this summer, because there's more pressing needs, and exactly why Kim Min-jae I don't think will come, is that most of United's budget is going to go on a striker, whatever he ever buys a football club. Then you deal with other needs after that. United aren't winning the league next year, okay? So they're not going to have the consistency to overturn Manchester City, but they need to get closer, and that's organic growth. Next summer, if they need one or two players, which is when you'll know they're ready to challenge, then they can spend a lot of money on a goalkeeper. Then they can spend that type of money. But if it's a blank checkbook, would Ten Hag replace De Gea? Yeah, probably.
Uh, is it true that Ten Hag fell out with Andre Onana, his goalkeeper at Ajax, who's now at Inter? Or
No idea, man. I'm no clue.
because that's what I've heard from a couple of people, and other people have said different things. Um, he obviously would be an option if United could afford to bring him in. Um, yeah, so it's we've no idea what keeper we're going to sign or
I
what
don't
centre
think it'll be
forward
a
we're going to
goal.
sign or
Well, no,
anyone.
not even Ten Hag knows that. Not
No.
even United know that.
Now this story has been doing the rounds today, and we might as well talk about it because it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Now, the man that was linked with United last summer before Casemiro came in, before the 4-0 defeat to Brentford, Adrian Rabiot, who seemingly his mother ruined the deal with her demands, uh, is now going to be a free agent this summer, and supposedly Ten Hag might revisit this one. And the player himself has improved massively on last season. He has 11 goals in 44 appearances. He had 0 goals in 45 the season before. Um, you could argue that he's a player who's his contract's running down and he's playing for a contract elsewhere. Um, do you realistically see Ten Hag revisiting Adrian Rabiot this summer?
Yeah, United need squad depth. And again, the reality is it's very hard to get that when you're going to be limited on what they can spend. So I think Rabia would be a really good addition to the squad. I'd be worried if that was their flagship signing over the summer. It would concern me. But if it's about adding squad depth, there's nothing wrong with that. He's someone that, again, like I was talking about with De Gea, if someone gets injured and who's your starter, you can throw Rabia in and you can trust him. So I don't think. I think we have to trust Ten Hag decisions. They won't always be popular, but if he wants Rabiot, yeah, I'd be perfectly fine with it. I mean, He got a free transfer last summer, and Christian Eriksen, no problems, and then Christian Eriksen's been a really good signing for United.
Okay, everybody joining us in the comments, please subscribe to the podcast and give me a wee like on the video. Um, Now, I just want to talk about the centre forward position. So we're still absolutely no closer to working out who United are going to sign in this crucial position. Um, who would your preference be, Phil, in terms of a number 9 signing this summer?
I think Big Osman would be perfect for United. I think when you look at Ten Hag, he likes big, tall strikers, number nines. He wanted that Sebastian Haller. No, I mean it's true. There's a reason why I wanted Sesko. There's a reason why I wanted Arnautovic. Yeah. Um, there's a reason why I wanted those types of players. Because they all fit a certain profile, and I think Osman would fit that certain type of profile for what Ten Hag wants. Very different from what you need to have up front. Um, I think a top goal scorer won't just isn't just essential, but will also bring out the best in Jadon Sancho. Will bring out the best in Anthony. It will bring out the best in United's midfield, because midfielders get confidence from assists when strikers start converting. That confidence goes right through the team. It goes right through the players, and so it's fun. It's a really important signing. You have to be careful, like Goncalo Ramos, whatever. You look at Darwin Nunez, a lot of money was spent, and he's miles off the Premier League level for me. So I think Osimhen would be perfect.
Would Osimhen not be the most expensive option of all? Could that not be like 130 million euros or something? Could you see United going that high?
Yeah, but then why spend 100 million on someone that's you're not really worth? It's not really worth that. I'd rather spend 130 million on someone you really want than 90 million, 100 million on someone you're not really sure about. So um, I don't want to spend all summer chasing Harry Kane, and for Daniel Levy to turn around and say, 3 days before the window, he's signing a new contract.
Yeah, that would be my worst fear as well. Kieran Kennedy here in the comments says Ollie Watkins would do a good job at United. Do you think he could potentially be a Dwight York style signing for United? What do you think?
I think they're looking for someone that Ali Watkins has had a good season and certainly done well under Unai Emery, but I think for United they're going to look for someone that's a little bit more proven at the very highest level, where Watkins hasn't done that in the Champions League. And plus getting him out of Villa would cost an absolute fortune, so I don't think that will happen. No.
Um, Donny here, still a huge fan of Benjamin Sesko. I know you talked about him a lot, Phil, on your podcast. Are United still looking at him?
I haven't asked in a while, mate. I know that they certainly liked him last season, and I know that they weren't exactly put off by the fact that he, could go to Leipzig. And I know, obviously they do a lot of business, and Leipzig would sell him from, so I don't think it's an issue. But yeah, I like him. I think he's a very good striker, but he's really young, and to have him as the starting striker would be a big risk.
Paul here mentions Ivan Toney. That would be an exciting option, and also Nicky here mentions Ivan Ferguson. He's a player I'm sure both of us would want at United for more than just his ability, because of his nationality as well.
Evan on Hindi Evan.
Sorry, I keep
Evan Ferguson just signed a new contract at
Ivan.
Brighton,
Yes.
and he needs to stay there for another couple of years, in my opinion. So yeah, I think Evan Ferguson's a really good striker, but he's in the right place. Who was the other one?
Ivan Toney.
Yeah, but he's going to get suspended due to the betting scandal. So very good player. Like my mate sold him, Darren McCantley from Peterborough, rates him really highly. But I don't see that happening because I think he's going to get suspended for quite a while.
Oh dear. Yeah, there's so many options out there. It's hard to know who United are going to go for. In an ideal world, we'd want an experienced striker who's going to guarantee us 20 league goals, and then maybe a younger striker to be his understudy. But I don't know whether we're going to have the budget for both of those things this summer. Um, Somebody asked here, Dixon asked here, is Mason Greenwood coming back? I don't see
Not
that
put
happening.
it. Not put it.
Okay. I didn't don't really want to talk about it either, but there's a certain section of the online fan base who continually bring this up. I want to keep talking about it, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm not going into it, so it's not for me to say.
yeah, yeah, and Danny agrees with what I was saying. We need experienced on youth two strikers,
Is that Jared Burner
because I
account?
think, yeah,
Don't agree with what you're
I
saying.
think,
I got posting comments pretending to be someone else. There's no way. No one agrees with you.
yeah, this is like an echo chamber, isn't it? Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think Martial and Vegas would probably both go this summer. Phil, do you reckon that yourself?
Figures they can see Martial. I mean, it'd be hard for me to assume that there's a sport director out there saying we need to strike. I look and imagine it and go Andy Martial's the answer. I mean, the risk is massive. I mean, maybe if you need to cover his wages, he'll go somewhere else maybe. But does he have a body that's capable of playing professional football anymore? I don't think so.
I can see his teeth a little bit.
Yeah, he's well. He scored a few goals lately, so maybe that'll help his cause with finding a club in the summer. But yeah, he's got 1 year left on his deal, and his wages are enormous. So it's going to be hard for United to get off the books. Like you say, it's probably have to going to be a loan where United cover some of his wages. But Veghorst has done nothing to earn a permanent deal at the club. Um, Very likable guy, and nobody works harder than him on the pitch, but he just doesn't bring enough quality to the table, I'm afraid. Um, Paul here says Robbie Keane's back at Leeds. He would do a job.
Mm.
Somebody says at the weekend, Solskjaer was at the game, that we should bring Solskjaer down and play him. His finishing would be better than some of our forwards, even now. Um, yeah, it's really hard to predict who the signing is going to be in that position, on in any position. And what you're telling me is that we're going to sign no one until July.
Well, how can they?
It's God, that's ridiculous. So
Did you really expect
the
anything
Glazers,
else?
no, so the Glazers have been irresponsible owners right to the bitter end. Then, they,
Mate, come on. It's been 17
they,
years. Do
they
you
couldn't even do
really?
us a favour and
You know, 18
sell the club
years.
in
I
May.
mean, look, you know what these people are. They don't care. They just don't care. So, do they care that United won't get the players they want this summer? Why would they give a shit? They're sitting in Florida. It's irrelevant to them. So, they're certainly not going to, shave a few hundred million off United's price so that United can get some new players this summer. I mean, 4 of the 6 siblings don't care about United. Yes, there's more than one of them behind me. I have 3 dogs in the house. I'm gonna hear what's that one? What do you want, that right there? Yeah. There's another one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real nice dog you have there, Phil.
Which one? There's a 3 of them, mate.
I can only see
adopted.
one.
No, you know what? They're behind me because they're starving. You think I have 3 here? I want 3. They're harassing me.
Because you've been doing back-to-back podcasts and they're getting a bit fed up. Yeah. Yeah, I think I've covered just about everything unless somebody else wants me to talk about something else. Kieran here mentions Charlie McNeil getting anywhere near the first team next year. I don't see it happening next year. Probably.
Not next year, no. I mean, he's out on loan, so he's at Newport, isn't he? So I don't think he's at that level. So he's a talented kid going from City, but the jump is massive.
Yeah. I think he'll go
They would need to be at the
to maybe
championship level
a
for
League
at
One
least a
club.
year. I mean, you look at Mad Diallo.
Yeah.
Mad Diallo we brought back, I'm sure, but he had to play really well at the championship. For Charlie, he's going to have to play really well at a level like that for it even to be a consideration.
Do you think Ahmad is going to come in and compete with Anthony for that right wing berth next season?
Definitely think he'd be a consideration whether he playing the right or playing the left. I think Jadon Sancho is the one that's going to have to really step his game up, but I think Jadon Sancho will benefit from having a top class striker at the football club. United done the right thing by leaving him mad. They were talking about bringing him back in January, and I know they've had some injuries. He definitely could have contributed, but I think he would benefit from having been at Sunderland for the last 6 months, especially playing at that level. And I think it's great.
Yeah, some of his goals have been absolutely spectacular.
Me
I'd love
too.
to see that at United next season. So just finally, I want to ask you about Alejandro Garnacho. How excited are you about this player?
And someone just asked me about Evan Ferguson. You take a look at Garnacho's numbers compared to Evan Ferguson, and I'm excited about Evan Ferguson, the young Irish kid. I want to see him do well, but you take a look at Garnacho, and we talked about the absence and the consequence of losing people like Varane, Martinez, Ericsson, players like that. Even Rashford was had enormous impact, but so too Garnacho. I mean, you look at that Fulham game. How many times has Garnacho come off the bench in games last 10 minutes, rescued United? So many times he's been worth. He's worth. For me at least 6 to 9 points. I refuse to believe in all the games that he was out that United wouldn't have taken points out of those if he had have been fit. Like I look at that Southampton game a lot, or I look at other games where I feel like Garnacho would have definitely made a difference away to Brighton. He definitely would have made a difference. Even in the Brighton semi-final, I think that he's been a huge loss.
Yeah, I think if we are somehow going to overcome Manchester City in the FA Cup final, I think Garnacho is going to have to produce a bit of magic in that match. Probably Rashford as well, and then we might get a draw and get it to penalties. Um, by the way, if we do go to penalties in that game, do you think it'd be a sensible by Ten Hag to do a Van Gaal and bring on a Butland for the penalty shootout? What do you think? If we're to get that far,
Well, given De Gea's track record and saving penalties, mate, I don't think there's many worse options. So, so I really don't think that game will go to penalties though.
because you're anticipating an absolute mauling. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean that's the reasonable expectation, but United will never have a better incentive to stop City winning the treble than to have it in their own hands. And I would like to believe that no matter what happens, win, lose or draw, it's not a mauling. That United players come off that field with a sense of pride and respect, and the fact that they've been mauled at Anfield, they've been mauled at City, and stop letting this happen.
um, just one last question, and from Matt here. He says, "Will Jim clear the debt if he takes
Yeah, he
over?"
has to clear the debt. So the debt, I mean, for most part, the debt will be cleared, and if the money that he borrows will be borrowed against his assets, not United. It does not concern me. If the Glazers went out and borrowed a billion tomorrow and paid off the debt and borrowed it against their assets, it would be great. So I don't think Jim Ratcliffe's borrowing is really an issue. People have their own opinions on who they want to buy the football club. It's entirely up to them, but it's really important they understand basic finance and why. That no matter who buys the club, it's not going to be unlimited transfer funds. And Jim Ratcliffe owning United's debt is not a concern.
Okay, yeah. Patrick O'Shea here's just mentioned Alvaro Fernandez. I think he's on loan at Preston. I think he's had a good season. That would be an interesting option at left back. We when we play Shaw at centre back, we miss him at left back, so we don't really have. We're playing Dallo, who's right footed, obviously, and Malacia, who's still a young kid, who's not doesn't have the same ability going forward as Luke Shaw. If we could, you know, when Shaw's playing centre back, I want to have an adventurous left back there, and maybe Fernandez could provide that option in the future. But let's see. But thank you for coming on, Phil. It's been a
My
pleasure as
pleasure,
always.
mate. My pleasure. Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
please,
Sorry for my
everybody,
kids in the background.
no problem at all. Please, everybody, subscribe to the podcast, drop us a like on the video, and get more of your comments in. And I will see you later then, Phil.
Just there we go. See you later, mate. Bye.